you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Snap Bingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College, Dabigo Road. GMS Snap Bingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.
Another week, another episode, and another record from Jacob Kiplimo. A very good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're watching. This is Second Take with IDK. So happy to be here. Beautiful view from Lugogo. I'm not sure if you can see the team training behind us, but my name is Mebo Kebirungi, and with me, as usual, I am honored to host him on his show, Isma Dakaba Chigongo.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, Mabel, and I'm glad to be here. What you mentioned right behind us is the national cricket team.
Yeah.
They are training for a trip to Namibia. They should be playing in Namibia beginning on March 18th. That is in preparation for the journey to qualify for the 2028 T20 World Cup. While in Namibia, they will play 3 T20 internationals and then 2 ODIs. So getting through their paces, I've seen Riazat Alisha at the crease with Kenneth Waiswa. They were the 2 batsmen, and I saw Juma Miyagi, one of the bowlers from the other side. Largely a changed team. I like the idea that they are trying to lengthen the size of a team. So they are trying to build a bit of the depth. So when you look at the players that were named, there is some faces that have not been regulars on the side. Gerard Olipa is one of those, but then a few other regulars, and then those who are returning to the side, including our friend Simon Sesazi, who we see so often, has not been selected for the national team in the recent past, but glad to see him back.
Okay.
Scored lots of runs during the recently concluded T20 league, and his team won the championship. So yeah, they are going through their paces, and that's what they are doing, I think, for the past month or so. Very unfortunate they've missed out on the recently concluded T20 World Cup, yet they played in the previous one that was in the USA and the Caribbean back in 2024. Did not qualify for this one, but hopefully they'll do enough to qualify for the next edition in 2 years, which will be New Zealand and Australia. Yeah, it would be interesting if they can make it back to that championship.
Okay, and we'll definitely be talking about India later on, T20. But how was your weekend? It was Women's Day. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't receive anything from you, by the way. But yeah, how did you spend the public holiday on Sunday?
Primarily, I spend my Sundays at Daily Monitor because I'm part of a team that does the Monday edition of the Daily Monitor. So that is routine. But also throughout largely my adult working life in the media, I've always spent my Sunday in office. Actually, when I was doing radio at Kabozi, I largely preferred working on Sunday. So I always did the Sunday afternoon games. First of all, there is no traffic. You get into the city, whether you're using a boda or a taxi. Actually, I remember one of those Sundays when I was still doing commentary and analysis on Kabozi Kubiri for the Premier League. I even got a chance to take a Pioneer bus for the experience on a Sunday because there were no people. Then I'm thinking, okay, I see a lot of debate about this orange bus, so let me take it. So I had to take it to town, many years ago. Yeah, but I love working on Sunday, so it's never really goes out of sync for me, really. But happy Women's Day for those who really love it, who really care about it. Yeah, but while in office, I watched all the events that were in Kololo.
I also watched
almost the entire event.
I didn't watch really
because I watched the speech of the UN resident coordinator.
Yes.
And then there was a lady also UN. Then I watched the speech of the Minister of State in charge of gender, Peace Mutuzo. I watched Betty Amongi speak, and that one I have met. I also watched the Vice President, who was guest of honor.
Yeah.
Retired Major Jessica Lupo also speak the entirety of the speech. And, she said, because she was delivering an address on behalf of the President, and she said the president told her to tell the people that women are better managers. And when he's placed people in positions of authority or responsibility, he's discovered that women manage many things better than men. And I don't know whether that is true.
They manage homes, for instance.
Maybe homes are the easier task.
Ah.
Maybe if all of us were good managers, our country would be better.
Better.
We have a vice president who is a lady. We have a prime minister who is a lady. We have a speaker of parliament who is a lady.
How many deputy prime ministers are ladies? Aren't they?
Two of them. Two of them. Right Honorable Rebecca Kadaga and Honorable Lukia Nakadama, who I have also met, and Kadaga I have also met. So I've been in some high places. I just haven't been lucky. You meet them and then your life is the same. You have to go back and work.
Well, I attended a great event on Saturday, on the day before Women's Day. It was at church, Watoto Church in Weogerere. It was quite good. Panel preaching and some exhibition from ladies just going to support the local industry. So, yeah, that's...
Maybe the one thing that happened during this weekend, and did not happen on Sunday, on Saturday, I met a mother to one of my colleagues, Gistin Angarukiremo.
Oh, Auntie Jolly.
Yeah, Auntie Jolly, yeah.
Talk about Auntie Jolly.
I met Auntie Jolly for the first time.
Where?
Yeah, I was pleased with our discussions about her with
She
Gistin.
came to the station?
Yeah, she was in town. She was in town for Women's Day. You know, she's involved with the NRM structures in Rukonjiri. I think she's Secretary for Finance. And of course, she's a leader in the community through her LC. And also, she owns a primary school in Rukonjiri.
Auntie Jolly Primary School.
Auntie Jolly. These days, they also have a nursery school. I think it's called God Cares Nursery School.
Okay.
So I was very thrilled to meet her finally. So, Gistin, thanks for the honors
and hello,
of meeting your mom for the very first time. It was, it was quite enriching.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the holy grail of English football. Something that has never been done before. The quadruple. People are talking about the quadruple. Is it possible? We have two contenders, Arsenal. Imagine two contenders, Arsenal and Manchester City.
Would be, first of all, the one confirmation we have that both of them will not win the quadruple. Because they meet in the Carabao Cup final. So at best, either one of them wins it, or in the end you have to set off a treble. It will take quite a monumental task for Arsenal, Manchester United to win the quadruple. There's teams that have done the treble, of course, the most famous of them being Manchester United, if you go back to 1999. And of course, there's also been Manchester City. They've done that during the Pep Guardiola era. But there have also been teams in other countries. Barcelona under Guardiola did it back in 2008-9. And then there is Bayern Munich, when they had Jupp Heynckes in charge of the team. They've also done that treble and even gone past a quadruple, because that would mean you win 6 trophies in a calendar year, which would be your league, your FA Cup, or called the Copa del Rey in Spain, or the German Cup, or the DFB Cup in Germany. Then you win also what would be the League Cup, which is the Carabao. Then you win the Champions League. Then you might have to win the FIFA Club World Cup and perhaps a UEFA Super Cup. And if there is an additive, then you win the Community Shield, which in Spain would be the Super Cup, and in German would be the German Super Cup. So it's quite a task, and it's a good thing that we get to match and there's a discussion around whether it's doable. In the last few years, the team that has come closest to winning that quadruple has been Liverpool.
Yeah.
However, in most of those seasons when they've had the opportunity, they've not delivered on it. Actually, in one of the seasons when they had an opportunity to win the quadruple, they ended up only winning the Carabao Cup. So the season was a bit of an anticlimax in every sense of the word. Of course, not as bad as Bayer Leverkusen back in 2002 under Klaus Topmoller, that team that had Oliver Neuville, Michel Ballack, and several of the other guys. eventually had the chance to win a treble, lost the German Cup, lost the league. Actually, were knocked off the top of the German Bundesliga on the second last day of the season, and then lost the Champions League final to that great Zinedine Zidane goal. Yeah, and then their season fizzled out that way. So they failed to win any of the three trophies where they had a great opportunity to deliver, and that's what started the story about Michel Ballack having a curse. Eventually, of course, wasn't true. Of course, in that year for Ballack, it ended up not only did he lose with Bayer Leverkusen, they also lost the World Cup final to Brazil. And that curse stuff started. But for me, that is even looking too far back. Many times when I look at teams that have the ability to have the opportunity to win a treble, I normally want to have this discussion in May.
Not now.
Not now. Yeah? And I always love to have that discussion in May when, one, the teams, they must have, at least for me, a 7 to 10 point league in terms of a league title, because the league is the toughest to win. Then they should be somewhere close to a semi-final, final in the Champions League. And by then, they should have won what would be the Carabao Cup. Luckily, that final comes up sometime, I think March 22nd, should be Arsenal versus Manchester City. So we'll get a glimpse of that. Then the FA Cup final, of course, will come up later. For me, that's one area that I felt everyone was a discussion about the quadruple somewhere in February or March. But anyway, we are having the discussion already. If we are supposed to have it, the next thing that everyone should be debating is the size of a squad. To be able to deliver on 4 titles in a short span of time, you must have a squad that is deep enough that even if you had injuries, the people who are covering up should have the kind of quality that will cover up for the players who are injured in that spell of time. Now, when I look at the two sides, and perhaps this weekend gave us a glimpse of how deep their squads are because of the teams they put up in the FA Cup. To start with, Pep Guardiola rotated as many as 10 players.
That's exactly what I wanted to make sure it was. Yeah.
The actual number.
Yes.
How many?
Made 10 changes to Manchester City's starting lineup in their 3-1 FA Cup victory over Newcastle.
Now, that is one area. The size of a squad, for me, is going to be very important. If someone can rotate as many as 10 players and get a result against a supposedly formidable Premier League side in Newcastle, for me, that's a very, very good sign that they can get away with rotation, because rotation is a risk and reward game.
Yeah. If
you rotate your squad the way Sir Alex Ferguson used to, and you win games, you're a genius. When you rotate your squad the way Claudio Ranieri used to at Chelsea, you become a tinkerman. And the same applies to the former Liverpool manager, Rafael Benitez. They would rotate too much, and when they lose games or they drop points, everyone says they are tinkermen. But it's a risk and reward game, and I saw an interview of Liam Rosini over the weekend saying the same, that it's a risk you have to take, because even he rotated his squad for that game against Wrexham in the FA Cup because they have to play PSG in the Champions League this week. So for me, the depth of the squad is also critical. Does the quality of the players coming off the bench represent a drop in quality that is not so huge that you should be able to get a result? I noticed that Guardiola, for example, had players like John Stones come into the squad and performed admirably well. John Stones in any other season would have been a first-team player, but because of the injuries and the loss of form, is now a squad player at City. You move to Arsenal. So often this season, we've given Arsenal a lot of credit that they've had the deeper squad because the drop-off in quality from their first team to their bench side or their second 11 is not very big. When you think about the drop-off in quality, when you rest Calafiori and play Hikapi, the drop-off in quality may not be very big. So that also puts them in a situation where they can be able to rotate and get the results they need. But like I stated, the risk and reward game shows that the managers have to be very brave to make those kind of decisions. If, for example, you choose not to play Declan Rice in a league game, let's say against Everton, because you have a Champions League fixture against Leverkusen, takes a bit of bravery for the coach to say, we are going to play Christian Nogard and not Declan Rice for that particular game. So for me, also the depth is very, very, very important. The other's got to be injuries. You've got to be very lucky on the injury front. When you read Sir Alex Ferguson's book, I think the title is called Leading. There's where it talks about the team that won the treble back in 1999. And in 1999, they suffered one major injury. Yes, they had players in and out of the squad because of minor knocks, strains, and sprains. And most of those injuries would last a week or two. I think they missed only one player for a lengthy period. Should have been, was it the defender Rosenberg? I think there was only one player for the entire season who was out for 4 or 5 months. And if you're going to be able to deliver on a promise or a dream of a treble, let alone a quadruple, you must have very, very good luck with the injuries. If you're not that lucky with the injuries, then there's going to be a lot of trouble with the squad. And for me, that is the other one. Maybe finally, is something that I do not really believe in, because luck comes to the prepared. You must be very lucky.
So it's not realistic. Not only
In many
this
cases,
season, but even in the seasons
yeah, because
to come.
I've shared a lot of history to show how
Yes,
difficult it is
yeah.
to win. So you must be very lucky. Come to think of it, for the benefit of English Premier League viewers, and the generation that supports Man City are mostly younger, under 20. For most of the people watching this show, our reference United, that for them to win that treble in 99, they had to go through an FA Cup replay in the semi-final. The famous Ryan Giggs goals against Arsenal. Then you get to a final where you go a goal down against Bayern Munich, and then score 2 goals in added time to win the game by 2-1. So there must be a tinge of luck somewhere throughout the season, and especially in the bigger games. Maybe right now, they've not needed luck. Maybe City and Arsenal have not needed luck to get where they are. But for the rest of the season, besides the things I've mentioned, the depth, the injuries, you're going to need a bit of luck. You're going to get into a situation where you need a lucky escape, either through the referee. Of course, these days it's very difficult to get a lucky escape, considering that every decision is reviewed through VAR. Yeah, in the past maybe it was much easier without VAR. So you need some kind of luck, and sometimes you cannot explain, yeah, what luck is in life or in sport.
Okay, I want to talk about Pep Guardiola, because we see he was handed a too-much ban.
Yeah.
He received his 6th yellow card of the season. So are we seeing a hunger in him that we haven't seen throughout this season? A hunger and a desire, and maybe anger as well.
I think he's been very competitive his entire life. Luckily with his coaching career, and for some of us with his playing career, we've watched him from the start, because it's now 18 years since he stepped into that dugout. For Barcelona, his first game should have been either against Numancia or Sasuna, one of those.
Yeah.
I remember Idris' first 2 games, and everyone was asking,
Who is he?
Pep, who is this? Who is this? Then eventually won his 3rd game. At this stage of the season, the least you can expect of a great manager who's won everything that there is to win in sport is that kind of a hunger and attitude. And what was the yellow card for? Right at the end of that game against Newcastle, he walked to the referee to protest. I think he felt there had been a foul by Kieran Trippier on Jeremy Doku during the game that he thought the referee should have called. Yeah? And he wasn't, and he said in his interview, he said he wasn't even appealing for a penalty because he thinks a contact had been outside the box. But for the referee to let the game go on, he felt that was very unfair. So there is a bit, I think the minimum you can expect from him is hunger. So he's booked for that. And I remember the press conference was very mad because he said it's obvious he's going to be banned because of what the referee did. Luckily, I don't think he's missing very big games because one of them is against West Ham. Okay. And the other game, I think one is against West Ham. I think is also in the league. Maybe not the biggest. Maybe not the games where they need his voice, because it would be very wrong if he's not there for the game against the Arsenal. Yeah, they need him for that. But also importantly, when you mention, is this unseen hunger and anger? No, I don't think so. I think he's been engaged his entire life. He's football and nothing more. There is literally nothing more about him. Maybe, okay, these days he's got involved with the Catalan politics too, where he believes in Catalan independence. But eventually it's about the football, and he badly wants to win. And this would be quite a title for him if he went on and won the league, for example. He's been written off, including by many people around the world, including myself, because I don't think he has the squad currently. I think this team is in transition because there are so many young players who still have to grow and learn and develop into the kind of players that he wants them to be. So I think he will not be able to win. But if he turns it around, for example, Arsenal collapse and he goes on to win the league, I think it will be one of his greatest titles. And he's won so many. For it to rank somewhere among his biggest titles, that would be quite a story.
Okay. So still keeping it with football, but now European football, we see in the Champions League.
Yeah.
Now it's a fight for the quarterfinals as we head into the last 16, Europe's biggest clubs. Let's start by talking about Galatasaray versus Liverpool. They both have very strong home atmospheres. Who do you think will take it between the two?
Of course, at kickoff, everyone will say Liverpool are favourites. Galatasaray do not know the scent of 6 European titles. Liverpool have that, and they've written some of the greatest stories in Europe. And the famous saying about European nights at Anfield never dies. However, Liverpool will go there with Galatasaray having a lot of confidence that they could get the result. Remember, in the last round, Galatasaray knocked out Juventus, and that included a 5-2 result in Turkey. And when you talk about the atmosphere, Galatasaray will need every decibel to the unit of a decibel for that game. One of the things they do well, when they get that noise behind them, they tend to start well. And when they start well, then you're in a bit of trouble if you're Juventus and you can't deal with the noise. And of course, in the last game, Juventus also got a man sent off in Turkey. For me, that is the one advantage that Galatasaray will have over Liverpool in the first leg. And I have a feeling that if Galatasaray are to go through, they need to win their home encounter. Luckily for them, that wouldn't be far stretch, because this season, they've also beaten Liverpool. Remember, in the league phase, these two clubs met, and that Victor Osimhen goal was sufficient to get Galatasaray over the line against Liverpool. But I want to find reasons where Liverpool do not advance, and I'm struggling too that for everything that Galatasaray are, Liverpool have been actually better in Europe than they've been in the league, because there are circles, and I've seen some technical people say their game perhaps suits a European game much more than it suited England. And what part of the game is that? First of all, they play at a very slow tempo. And because they do not have wingers or runners in wide areas, with the decline of Mohamed Salah and the kind of shitty season that Cody Gakpo is having, and there's been calls even to drop him, they play a lot narrower with a bit of a midfield diamond, where you have Ryan Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai and Florian Wirtz, and that helps them to keep the pitch a bit narrow. And that's how they've been able to get results across Europe. But the one thing that maybe has not worked for Liverpool this season is that they've fluctuated, they've blown hot and cold. Sometimes you don't know what Liverpool team is going to show up, and sometimes their confidence has been shot. Yeah, when you watch them the previous week against Wolves, I thought their confidence was shot. And then, of course, eventually they came up in the FA Cup game and sorted that and scored the 3 goals to win the game against Wolves 3 days after losing in the league. But their game has been suited better for Europe. And maybe that's the one thing they've got to do. But for them to get a result over the 2 legs, they've got to go to Turkey and come back. Even if they were to lose, the margin should not be anywhere above 2 goals.
Okay.
Like we noticed in the previous round, if Galatasaray have a 3-goal leader like they had against Juventus, Liverpool will be in big trouble for the second leg, because to score 3 unanswered goals, even for Liverpool, who have some of the most famous comebacks, the one in the final against Milan, the one against Dortmund in the Europa League, the one against Barcelona when they were 3-0 down from the Camp Nou and then won the return leg by 4-0, that may not be sufficient for this team, because this team concedes way too many goals for them to be very comfortable. So they've got to keep the game very close. They've got to keep the pitch very narrow, like they've done in most of Europe, and that way then they'll have something to fight for in the second leg.
So would you also, for the other English clubs that are there, would you say, apart from City, we haven't talked about City and Real, but you have West Ham, sorry, not West Ham, you have Spurs, Newcastle and Chelsea. Would you say that it's an uphill task, given Newcastle is against Barcelona, Atletico will be playing Spurs, and PSG versus Chelsea?
Of those, I think it's easy to say Newcastle have the toughest game. To play Barcelona would be tough in any era. Yeah. And for the years we've lived, Barcelona have always been a tough proposition, and Liverpool and Newcastle are going through a very tough spell. Of course, their tough spells.
Not as bad as Spurs.
Okay, we are going to get to Spurs, but their tough spell is that they play a lot of City these days. They played City, I think, 4 times and lost in the league, and then in the Carabao Cup twice, and then the most recent in the FA Cup. And I don't think they've got the balance right. Their coach their coach Eddie Howe is having to deal with the absence of Bruno Guimaraes in that midfield, and that has affected a bit of a balance. While they've tried out Nico Voltamada as the number 10 behind Anthony Gordon, I don't think, while there's been results which they've got, but I don't think it's the most perfect way to execute their game plan. One of the ways maybe they can get a result against Barcelona is to sit very, very deep, play with a low block, allow Barcelona possession, and then probably, for me, have a double team on Lamine Yamal. One of the things that I would do if I'm Eddie Howe tomorrow or this week in the Champions League is to play a right-footed player at left back. Don't put Andrew Hall there. Play Tino Livramento or any of the other right-footed fullbacks at left back, so that whenever Lamine Yamal is turning inside, he's going onto the stronger foot of your left, of what to be your left back in that position. For me, that's a start. For Newcastle, everything has got to be about prevention. Yeah, they are going to walk into a game where they have a 20% chance of winning, and when that's your opportunity over the 2 legs, you've got to do some extraordinary things on the day for you to be able to get a result against Barcelona. And considering that the second leg is in Spain, so you must win the first leg if you're Newcastle, if you're going to have a chance. So it's a write-off for me. It's a write-off. I don't see how Barcelona do not make it in the second round, into the next round, into quarterfinals. The other, Tottenham. Why would they even be preoccupied with Europe? Yes, they got through, did well in the group stages, but their lifeblood has got to be what they do in the Premier League. Their worry is whether they stay in the league or not.
Yeah.
And it's becoming increasingly very difficult to make a case for Tottenham to stay in the league, considering that all the teams below them are playing better than Tottenham. Wolves, West Ham, Nottingham Forest are all playing better than Tottenham right now. You could even add Burnley. Okay, Burnley are the weak of all of them. They are not. They picked some positive results like the one against Chelsea, but in the end, all those teams are playing better than Tottenham. So their preoccupation for me has got to be where they finish in the league. The game against Atletico Madrid is a bit of a distraction. Atletico Madrid will be glad to meet Conor Gallagher. He left Atletico in January and joined Tottenham. But if I'm Igor Tudor, he's going to get paid or sacked for keeping them in the league. So their preoccupation has got to be
But
about
you can't
what they
also
do.
just go and, allow
You don't
to
lose,
get
of course.
5-0 or something.
No, you don't lose 5-0, but you go there and compete. But no one will be crying over Tottenham's exit from Europe if they are getting relegated. I think getting relegated is a bigger concern. Actually, the BBC did a story about relegation would mean Tottenham losing revenues in excess of £250 million. And those revenues, of course, come from TV rights, match day revenue at the stadium. That includes ticketing and the facilities. I have issues with how Atletico have declined over the past few years. I think Diego Simeone no longer sets up the way that gives him an advantage over teams. Defensively, they are no longer astute. They do not have the right balance, even if they choose to go forward these days. So there's a lot. I have issues with Atletico, but regardless of those, it should be their game against Tottenham because Tottenham should be preoccupied with their Premier League games. The other game is Chelsea PSG, a repeat of that FIFA Club World Cup final, where Chelsea showed us how to set up to beat PSG.
Though they lost.
They eventually wiped the floor with PSG in that final. I think the masterstroke for them first was moving Reece James into midfield. I don't know whether they can do that because the coach was different. That was Enzo Maresca. I don't know whether Liam Rosinia is confident with borrowing the same kind of script from the FIFA Club World Cup and use it against a PSG side that is not at the all-conquering heights of last season. Yeah? Last season, they were impossible to beat. Ousmane Dembele was playing like the best player in the world and eventually chalked that up with a Ballon d'Or to match. Now there's been a lot of injuries this season. And part of it is down to fatigue and what happens in a season. When you hit the kind of heights they hit, the next one cannot be the same. They actually in a bit of a fight also in the French League because loans are chasing them in that regard. So Chelsea have an opportunity if they defend well. And none of us knows what a good defensive performance of Chelsea looks like. The last time we saw it was in the American summer during the Club World Cup. Beyond that, we haven't seen Chelsea defend well. That's where, for me, it all starts. If they defend well, they have a very good opportunity against PSG. And that's because I think there's been a drop-off for PSG. And I've seen Luis Enrique has tried out several players. He's even tried to bring in the younger players, the teenagers, hoping that there's some kind of spark. And that spark has not come. But of course, even when you talk about Chelsea, PSG, you must think about the quality of some of their players. I've spoken about Ousmane Dembele, but you must also think about Desiree Doué. I think he's been one of their better players. In a time when most of their 18 players or their best players have struggled, Nuno Mendes has not hit the heights at left back that he hit last season. Kvaratskhelia, or Kvaradona, like I prefer to call him, because of his time at Napoli, has not been the same player. But he has that moment in him to cause trouble to any team. So for whatever Chelsea are, for me, it starts with how well they defend, how well they put numbers behind the ball, how good, for example, a player like Moises Caicedo is in winning back possession and to get them on the front foot. If they can defend well, they have a very good opportunity going into from this week and into the second leg of next week.
Okay. Manchester City versus Real?
Tiring fixture. I think we should be tired of having this game because we are talking about the 5th successive season that the two teams are meeting. And they are meeting in the knockout stage. I actually kept some of the stats from that particular encounter because I struggled to pick out what to say about the two teams. For example, they've met on 15 occasions in Europe, and each side has won 5 and they've drawn 5. When they met earlier this season, City won the game by 2-1 in Madrid. Now, you come to think of it, both of them are sandwiched. The fixtures come amid a sandwich of a league title pursuit, for both sides. So there is bound to be rotation. City did their job with their rotation against Newcastle. Real Madrid cannot afford that because Alvaro Arbeloa is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
After a very good start, and they won their most recent game against Celta Vigo. They've brought points in those. And then he walks into the game without Kylian Mbappe. So for him, it's about finding solutions. How do they cover for that gap? I've seen he's played there Gonzalo Garcia, who also did well, I think, in the FIFA Club World Cup before. But is it the quality that is going to give you the kind of goals? Because, for example, to knock out a team like Man City if you're Real Madrid and vice versa, you must score at least 4 to 5 goals over the two legs. We've seen in the times they've met over the past 5 seasons is that their games have been decided 4-3, 4-2. So in the end, you must be able to score at least 3 or 4 times over the two legs. Do Real Madrid have that player without Kylian Mbappe, without Rodrigo, who is going to score 5 goals, or the team collectively to get 5 goals over the two legs? And there's even not Jude Bellingham. He's also had his injury troubles. So you must get to a situation where Vinicius Jr. has to be very responsible and carry the load for this week's game and the return encounter next week. And for me, maybe that is the slight advantage that City will have. When I discuss the 5 goals, we know City have someone who can get them over the two legs in Erling Haaland. He's not played very well this year, or the numbers have not come as well as they did in the first part of the season. But still, they've even translated a bit of that burden away from Haaland. We've seen what Semenyo has done. We've seen what some of their substitute players can do. Ryan Cherki, Otijan Riders, and all the others who can be a bit of a support cast. I cannot make the same case for Real Madrid that besides Mbappe, that there's a lot of other players, that over the two legs you have 2 players who can get you 5 goals. Maybe not. I sense this is advantage Man City. However, if there's a team that switches on for Europe, it's Real Madrid. And it's the reason why they've won as many Champions League titles as they have. We're talking about, 13 or 14.
After almost being knocked out.
After almost being knocked out in the early stages. Yeah, they tend to find moments, over the years that even when they are not playing well, I always describe Real Madrid as a team of moments. When those good moments show up, they are going to be there to bury them.
They're prepared. What was that thing you were saying earlier? Something favors the prepared?
Luck favors the prepared. Yeah, or for those who love their English, say fortune favors the brave. I don't think even Real Madrid are brave. They're just right there to pick the right moment. When they're on the brink of an exit, and then you give them a sniff, a second opportunity, Real Madrid will take it. And for me, that is always a worry for any team against Real Madrid, that the slightest window they have to get a result, if, for example, the game is 1-0 and you have a chance to get 2-0 and you miss your chance, and then Real Madrid get an opportunity and equalize, you're in big trouble. And that's how well they play in Europe most of the time.
Okay. Atlanta versus Bayern, they're both attacking powerhouses. I don't know, do you think maybe for Bayern, their experience will play in their favor?
It should. Maybe the only disadvantage, and maybe we'll confirm by the time you watch this show, we'll have seen the news about Hurricane, because he's been having a slight problem, so may not be able to make the game. But even with his absence, I played Borussia Mönchengladbach and I watched the highlights and they were very, very good. Nicolas Jackson and Luis Diaz got the goals there. I think they will have too much for Atalanta. And I wasn't too pleased when watching Atalanta draw 2-2 with Udinese in the league. I felt you don't give her the kind of chances that they gave Udinese. If they do the same against Bayern Munich, they are in face marking that will make the second leg irrelevant.
Okay, and then we haven't talked about Leverkusen versus Arsenal.
Wow,
and Bodo versus Sporting, but
those are the last 2 of them. We'll finish with a fairy tale because Bodo have won 4 in a row, and I almost want to say on this show that they will knock out Sporting Lisbon. I want to say Bodo Glimt will knock out Sporting Lisbon, but Arsenal, what an opportunity! First of all, when the draw was done for the Champions League, the first thing that hit my mind was the fact that Arsenal are on the easier side of a draw. And this is in relative terms, because they've avoided the side that has Real Madrid, that has Liverpool, that has all these teams that have
Barcelona.
won a lot of the titles in Europe. So they're on the easier half of a draw. But easy is already on paper. You have to go there and deliver and put in the kind of performance that is going to make you one of the teams that is going to win. Part of the hunger created for the Arsenal from last season is them getting to that semi-final against PSG. And I thought they had performed admirably well in that second leg, even if they could not get past the wall that is Gianluigi Donnarumma in the end and miss their chances. But that journey, the bare minimum, I think, for me, for the Arsenal, is for them to get to that semi-final. It would be a catastrophe or even a crisis if they don't knock out Bayer Leverkusen. Regardless of where Bayer Leverkusen have been, Arsenal start as favourites, and there are not many games in Europe. I wouldn't say Arsenal would be favourites if they are playing Bayern Munich, or if they are playing Real Madrid, or they are playing all these teams, or even Liverpool, against these teams that have that word that sucks pedigree, that are bigger European pedigree than Arsenal. But when you're playing Bayer Leverkusen and you Arsenal, they've got to start as favourites, and they've got to go there and put in the kind of performance. They get over the line here and then get to a quarter-final. They are in the kind of path that the bare minimum for me has got to be a semi-final. Then we start to discuss whether they can win the Champions League or not. So even besides all the tactical setup, when we know how Mikel Arteta will set up, of course, with the obvious back four, with the guys in midfield, and right now Berechi Eze is undroppable. Is the reason why they got past Mansfield Town in the FA Cup. And we haven't seen Martin Odegaard even in the squad over the past few weeks. So it goes with the same setup. And I think they will be very difficult to stop from corners, because the teams in England maybe have learned how to negate that, and a bit of familiarity breeds contempt. But Bayer Leverkusen may not have the same. And I don't think they have the same kind of firepower for them to challenge Arsenal over the two legs. So for me, it's a show in Arsenal into the quarterfinals, and then they start to deal with their next challenge.
Okay, let's end the Champions League discussion with the fairy tale.
It's no one would have given Bodo Glimt the kind of thing that they've done, and they've picked some very important results. The most recent was what? Knocking out Inter Milan in the playoff round. And by now, we don't even know the names of their players. That says a lot. But what we know about Norway is that as a country, they are going back to the World Cup for the first time since '98. And when you think about Norway, the first thing that comes to mind is Haaland,
yeah.
And then the next is perhaps Odegaard. And if you watch a lot of your football, you're going to think about Soloth, who is normally Haaland's partner with the national team. Soloth, who plays at Atletico Madrid. The thing about teams like Bodo Glimt, I think, is always the collective. There's a time when everyone was discussing that the reason why they win is because they play on an artificial turf in Norway. Now, they've won games on the road, including winning in Italy. They've beaten Atletico Madrid. They've beaten Man City. Surely, if you are not feeling confident, and if that place is not bouncing, because you're talking about one of the tiniest cities ever to host a Champions League game, I'll be very shocked if Sporting Lisbon were to get a result. Over the two legs, for me, this is another of those where I see Bodo Glimt fairy tale continue at least for another round, and then they get knocked out in the quarterfinals. But in sport, when you're dreaming, no one should wake you up. And no one should wake up Bodo Glimt from this dream.
Okay. Now, moving on to here locally, a president returned nomination forms, and that is Mandela for Sports Club Villa. Any surprises there? Because a number of people did pick nomination forms, though it was 100 million, as you had stated.
Yeah. No surprises. I thought the rules could only allow one person to be president.
Non-refundable. But if it was refundable, would some people have,
But for a club, why would money for a club vote be refundable? After even nomination fees. after you're a Villa fan, the club is not going to be eaten by the money is not going to be eaten by the president who wins the election, because it goes into the club coffers and helps the club. In the end, I thought the rules were not very fair for everyone to contest. However, clubs in Uganda and globally cannot run a fair system where everyone stands. Clubs are supposed to be run by people who are dedicated to the cause of a club. Sporting institutions should be run by people who are dedicated to that cause. I do not imagine a situation where Ismail, who has never registered for VMT, and I'm using Ismail myself and I have registered previously, walks in because they have 100 million and want to become Villa president. For me, that does not add up. In the end, the chaos that surrounded the process, for me, has made the news more than Haj Mandela almost being returned, because there's still supposed to be an election on March 22nd, for which Mandela is unopposed. So there's supposed to be a declaration on March 22nd. But all the other people who came in were largely contesting the process, the rules not being fair, not just citing the 100 million being unfair as a nomination fee, because there was Farouk Meiwa, there was a gentleman I think called Samuel Kauma, there was Ben Misaga Joseph Muguru Mambazi, depending on what you know him as, and then there was Dennis Mbide Sebugwao. Those were the four. They all picked nomination forms and none of them returned. So only one person returned nomination forms, and by returning, you had to have paid the 100 million shillings to the Villa club accounts. Now, unfortunately, I don't think there was ever an intention for Haj Omar Mandela to organize a process that creates fairness or invites everyone who is a fan and a part of the Villa Members Trust to stand and become president. Because when he spoke at that meeting they had at East High School in Kulambiro, he spoke about things that, one, he never had an intention of returning to the club after almost 20 years away, but some people wanted him back and they forced him to come back. Two, he spoke a lot about how he has laid a foundation and Villa is ready to get back to the level that he thinks they will be competitive, not only for the league but also on the continent, including the start of the construction of a home, a stadium for the club. Yeah. So that was a man who was speaking about his grand vision to stay, as the club president. And in that sense, I don't think there was ever a chance of Mandela organizing a process that gets everyone in who wants to become Villa president. But in the end, what do Villa need at this point in time? Personally, I think they still need someone like Mandela with bottomless pockets who is willing to invest into the club to transit from dependency or to transit from being a parasite on the pocket of one rich man to become truly a community club. A one that has funds, that invest their money, that make it sustainable. Now, sustainability does not start with 100 rats coming together to become a lion. Sustainability starts with one lion stating that I'm the king of the jungle, then everyone in the jungle bows. But the intention for me has to be able to empower the club to become sustainable. And for me, that is the next step that Mandela has to undertake. It's not enough for everyone to start contesting whether the process was right or wrong. There is never going to be a fair process. When we hosted Moses Muhanji on this show, he said that when he came into boxing, the rules were not fair, but he got in with those rules and then changed them. I don't think in our setup it's even enough to say you're going to change rules and allow everyone in. There was never a chance of that happening in this situation. So for me, the next step is important. I've also seen people who have written to FUFA. I think some of the candidates wrote to FUFA asking FUFA to stop the process because they think it's wrong and ask FUFA to take over the club. I think Villa, for everything that the FUFA president is Moses Magogo and is a Villa fan, is also part of the VMT, is part of the members who vote in the Villa president. I don't think he has an interest right now in taking over Villa. I think FIFA have enough on their plate to deal with. For them to think of running a club currently would be asking too much.
Wouldn't it be conflict of interest though?
It would, but there's a lot of conflict of interest in this country. People have appointed their people into all kinds of positions. So I think even with that, they have no interest. They would have no interest in taking over the club. And for me, it wouldn't make sense.
No, some disappointment still with Villa and Express
over
the weekend.
For generations, by far the biggest game in Ugandan football. Actually, one of the games I attended in the early 90s in Masaka, where we lived, right outside the Masaka Recreation Ground, was a Villa Express game that ended up in a lot of violence, a lot of bottle throwing, and some eggs being thrown, which people claimed at the time, even if I was a young boy, people claimed they were rotten eggs. I don't know whether you could tell a rotten egg at the time. And I'm not even just praising the violence, but this is the game that already shut down the city. I was seeing a post by former Villa player Paul Mukatabala, who is now a national teams officer at FIFA, talking about how this game already shut down the city. I think for this time it went very quietly, and even the result even more disappointing, yeah, because the game ended 0-0. And personally, I don't discuss 0-0 games, yeah, because I cannot imagine. I was actually thinking about my friends, Jerome Mugalu, Elvis Senono, and Brian Kawalia. We had been with them on Saturday, and then they left Namuongo and went to Entebbe to watch Entebbe UPPC versus URA, which ended 0-0. Then they left that and drove to Kadiba to watch Villa versus Express, which also ended 0-0. So part of me was not even feeling for their fuel, but it also reminded me that I make the best decisions sometimes on which sports games to watch. Because how do people leave home and come to watch a 0-0?
I know.
In the league? No discussion there.
Okay.
However, there's a league title to fight for. Lately, Vipers have created what you'd call a siege mentality. After those 3 points that were handed to Kitara, they've decided that it's the world, it's them against the world. And you could almost tell from the kind of mentality. And they've been scoring loads of goals. Okay, they've now won their last two, but they had drawn the previous two. But ever since that decision was made, Vipers are almost trying to make a statement. So they traveled to Kamwenge, like it's called. I think the stadium is called Ramanja, if that's the right pronunciation, where they're playing in Barara City. They take the lead, a brilliant goal because of the team being involved. Milton Karisa with the cutback eventually for Samara Fatu gave them the lead. Mbara equalized, but then they scored an even more exceptional winner, Yunus Sentamu. Much maligned, clearly a player in decline. His better days, you'd have to go back 10 years when he played in the Chan and made it to AS Vita in Congo and made it to North Africa, where I played part of his football. Last season, he only scored 4 goals. But I thought the weight of this goal, because Vipers were dropping points and they were going to have what you'd call a 2-3 point lead over Kitara. So he comes off the bench and scores a volley in the 85th minute to give Vipers the win, the 2-1 victory over Mbara City. And I thought this is one of the more important goals he's going to score in the recent past. And he had no celebration for it. I think most of the stuff has been said about him and the decline has weighed on him. But in the end, a very important result in terms of a title race. And considering that all the other teams that are pursuing them have games this week. Of course, Vipers too have games this week. And I just want to look through some of those because KCC have worked their way back into the title race with that result against Police. But there's games including, you think of Vipers, for example, travel to Bombo to play against UPDF. KCC will be playing Express at Lugogo in one of the other encounters. And Vipers will wrap up this week with a home fixture against Calvary in a case of how many at Chitende on Saturday. It's a case of how many Vipers will score against Calvary because Calvary, I think, already relegated. And now they even have that case hanging over their heads. Remember, they played a game last week against SC Villa that ended after 45 minutes. because the ref said there wasn't enough security at the stadium. So they are bound to lose points according to the rules as the home side to AC Villa, and it's all trouble. So Vipers will be rare to visit on the carcass that will be left of Calvary by end of the week.
You talked about how you made great decisions on what to watch, and I know you watched some rugby. So
Yeah.
was that a great decision, the rugby you watched?
Yeah.
Impies.
Yeah. I've told stories on this show about Impis and the arrogance, which is the club anthem. What's motto? It's the "You'll never walk alone" of Impis. Yeah. Or more than a club for Barcelona, or all those other slogans across the world and mottos of the clubs that we know. So theirs is arrogance, and I thought they gave a very, very good account.
Though they
Despite
lost.
eventually losing to KCB Cobs 24-34, I thought I was right. I was impressed. And you could almost tell. I had a conversation with the Cobs assistant coach, Keith Seriange, and their outside center, Ian Arnold Munyani. And they were all impressed with how well Impis played, especially in that second half. Cobs must have arrived at the graveyard, one expecting a game, because Impis have that result when they beat Heathens. Then, when Cobs started well and had all these points at the start, I think they led 17-0 to start the game. They must have felt this is as bad an Impis side as we're going to meet. But then the response thereafter, I thought was very, very good. And despite losing the result, I left the graveyard very pleased with what Impis have been able to put up. And there's a reason why they have all this bravado around them. Yeah, that there are many seasons in the recent past, Impis have come into the league and all they are fighting is relegation. Yeah, and that's where they end up in the central region, in the lower tier, or they end up in the rugby premiership. Is always decided by some of these encounters. But by the time I walked out of the graveyard, I knew Impis will not get relegated. I think they are going to pick some more. There's going to be more scalps when they are playing at home.
And then Buffaloes, a surprise win there?
Yeah, a case of shedding some skin. Or for many years, Buffaloes were the understudy side of Heathens, and they decided a few years ago that they are going to be their own men, and they are now indeed no longer the prodigal son or the little brother. I think they deserve their own flowers. And I had been warned before the game that Toyota Buffaloes have enough to beat the Heathens, and eventually 12-7 as the final score in atrocious conditions. If you've seen some of the pictures, those conditions emphasize why Chadondo sometimes is referred to as Swamp No. Yeah? But in the end, the result for Buffaloes, as good as they could have got. And a reminder that Heathens have so many layers to go. But there's also something that I picked up on because of the league format that Uganda Rugby Union introduced. You're thinking about 12 teams playing 11 games, and there isn't home and away because you play one round.
Yeah.
Now, the table for the league emphasizes that. For me, it shows that maybe Uganda Rugby Union pulled out a masterstroke when they chose this table, or rather this kind of format. I was looking through the table, and for example, Pirates have 19 points, and they are the leaders. We're talking about 5 rounds played so far, 6 to go. Victoria Sharks, who are yet to lose a game, the one I joked about them drawing the league, yeah, because at some point they drew 2 games in a row. They also have 19. Toyota Buffaloes have 19. KCB Cobs, who are 4th, have 17. Heathens, who are 5th, have 16. There's only 2 teams that have 0. That is Kakira Simbas and Warriors. So the margin between, for example, number 1 and number 7, who is Impis, is only 5 points. So you win one game and you change your fortunes dramatically. So in terms of a format maybe that is working for them, because in the past, all these games would be nothing until Heathens play Cobs and the winner wins the league.
Yeah.
Now this format has changed that tremendously.
Okay, that's good. More of a level playing field, you could say.
Fair.
Okay. Some great news over the weekend, Isma.
Yeah.
Jacob Kiplimo. You have always had like a very high expectation and
a special place.
Yes. Were you watching it? Did you watch it?
No, it wasn't on television on my usual television. It wasn't there, but I've since watched the apps. It was a no contest. If athletics borrows some boxing rules, I think the competitor should have thrown in the towel by the 10-kilometer mark, because this was a race of Jacob versus Kiplimo. He was running in Lisbon. Lisbon is the capital of Portugal.
Portugal, yeah.
This was his first race in Lisbon in 5 years. Remember, he went to Lisbon and broke the world record there in 2021, which world record was taken away from him by Yomuf Kejelcha, the Ethiopian, who lowered it by a small margin. Then, last year, Jacob Kiplimo went to Barcelona and ran. Now, we're talking about the half marathon. We're talking about 21 kilometers. When he went to Barcelona to run the 21 kilometers, he lowered the world record back then and had become the first man in history to run under 57 minutes in 21 kilometers. However, World Athletics refused to ratify that record because they said the conditions were not what World Athletics allows for their races, so that world record does not count. So Kiplimo tells them, wait a minute, anti-Mwagala world record. He goes back to Lisbon this year and does 57.2, which is 10 seconds off the world record. That's monumental. I actually think that if he keeps going this way in the half marathon, he's going to break that world record again and put it below 57 minutes, which will be the first. So you're a runner, a walker.
I'm a walker.
What's your best time in 5 kilometers?
I think I can do 5 kilometers maybe in 45, 50 minutes.
And he's doing 21 kilometers in 57.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, because I was looking at the times. At the 5 kilometer mark, I think he went through 5 kilometers in 13 minutes.
Hey.
Yeah, shocking stuff that he was doing in Lisbon. So, and he has 2 Kenyans, I think, on his back. One is Kip Korir, and the other is what? Kiprotich.
Sebastian didn't run.
No,
Sebastian.
that one will come in the marathon.
Okay.
However, this is not the Holy Grail. On this show, I warned you that on April 26th, in front of your television, Jacob Kiplimo, Joshua Cheptegei, will be running in the London Marathon. This was only preparation. This is a bit like a starter. You walk into a high-end restaurant, not the one we use, not our restaurant, the one that Rasta Jeremiah behind the camera, not the restaurant they go to. In a high-end restaurant, you walk in and they give you a starter, which could be fruit, which could be something sweet, soup. Yeah, they give you soup. Now, Lisbon, where Kiplimo set the world record, is a starter. The real course,
the real meat,
the real meal, the real meat, the real biryani is on April 26th in London.
Okay. Formula One. Mercedes, are they back with that win? Will they rule this season?
They are. And I was while coming here, I was seeing a headline on the BBC. Is this what Formula One? Let me just translate. Let me read it the way it is, because it was very cheeky, and I'm a routine reader of the BBC all the time. I think 5 times a day I check to see whether they've changed their headline. Right now their headline is India. Was the new era Formula One really racing or more like a computer game? Yeah, because remember, the rules have changed, and I don't want even to bother people to understand the rules. The regulations have changed. One of those includes batteries and energy levels of these cars and all. That's one of them. But there's so many others. Now, what is going to happen? There's going to be more overtaking, yeah, in Formula One, because there's a significant advantage, I think, handed to either the car that is chasing or something like, I don't even to get into the rules. But in the end, Formula One over the years, every time they change their rules or regulations, there is a team that gains an advantage. In the last season, we saw how good McLaren were, eventually delivering the first championship for Lando Norris. Before that, we saw how good Red Bull were, and Max Verstappen went on to win 4. And in the past, you'd go to Schumacher, you'd go back to Lewis Hamilton, or you'd go back to Sebastian Vettel when he won 4 world titles in a row. Now the rules have changed, and they've given Mercedes a considerable advantage, and that advantage that aided George Russell to win the season opener in Australia. And Kimi Antonelli's teammate came second, and then the two Ferraris were third and fourth, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. However, there's a bit of a blame game because there were 3 virtual safety cars during the race for stoppages. One of them, I think, Oscar Piastri, crashed on his home race when perhaps 125,000 people were cheering for him. He crashed at the start of the race itself. And then there's, of course, the bad strategy of Ferrari not to pit during the safety cars. And that gave Mercedes a chance because they went and pitted and then came out and their tires were fresher. And I saw the pass that, for example, George Russell had on Lewis Hamilton. He had nothing to defend. The grip was gone. But in the end, maybe we are now into the Mercedes era. But there's not much of a conclusion you can make from the first race of the season because there's still a long way to go for us to choose. Yeah. There's still another 21 races to go. But Formula One is fighting to appeal to a young audience. And I saw the Sky Sports reporter, Craig Slater. He went to the fan section, and there were so many children in their teenage years or in their early 20s who had come, and they were very happy. And you almost sense what Formula One want to do. They want a newer audience. They are not looking at selling this to Toto Wolff, who is already sold into it, or Zach Brown, or all these other guys we know, Adrian Newey, who are part of Formula One for long. They are looking to that teenager or that boy in the early 20s who then becomes a Formula One fan for the next 50 years. And if this overtaking is what Formula One is going to offer for the entire season, bring on China.
Well, they have the Kardashian clan they can look to.
Yeah, that also helps, but because Kim these days is with Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, her kids and her sister's kids and, you know, the whole clan. But anyway.
Those women have abakaza abajoze and see. They move from here to there to there, and the men are pleased to have them.
I know, anyway. Right? I know. Well, let's talk about India now. A strong start, a sharp finish, the batting, the bowling. They are the winners of the T20 World Cup.
Perfect in terms of India, in terms of the delivery in that final against New Zealand. Disappointing, an anticlimax. I think, and reminds me of something I always say. Finals are never there to be played, they are there to be won. And I think that's what India did. But since everyone might have heard of the result, India posted 255 in the allotted 50 with 350s from their top order. Abhishek Sharma, Sanju Samson, and Ishan Kishan. And then eventually defending that, bowling out New Zealand and winning by 76. Of course, they have one of the best bowlers in the history of the game in Jasprit Bumrah with 4 wickets. But I want to make this assertion on this show. And maybe for some of the cricketers who watch this show, and I've met some of them, when you're playing in a final, a pressure game, and you win the toss, never choose to field. Always bat first. I don't care about the conditions. Call me a coward, call me anything, and I have enough history to suggest that in a final, because of scoreboard pressure, what we call scoreboard pressure in cricket, you're better off having runs on board and defending them than having a situation where you have to chase. Now, for me, for everything that New Zealand are, and sometimes logic does not work in sport. I was listening to commentary at the start of the game. India have never lost a game where they bat first in a final. But then New Zealand had never lost a game where they field first and get the chance to chase. But in my book, I'm better off with runs and defending them than fielding first, like the New Zealand captain did, Michelle Santner. And I thought he must sit there and regret that decision. There is a famous cricket game from 2003, the Cricket World Cup final, between India and Australia. The Indian captain should have been sort of Ganguly. Yeah, either Ganguly or Dravid, but should have been Ganguly was captain. Ganguly won the toss and invited Australia to bat. Australia posted 359 for 2. Ricky Ponting, I think, got 140 in that final. And I remember one of the people in commentary, the moment Ganguly handed Australia the chance to bat. The first conclusion from one of the people in the commentary said, "What have you done?" Because he knew India probably stood no chance, and India were taken to the cleaners and lost that. Now, regardless of the logic that has come into limited overs cricket and chasing being the better thing in T20, for me, you bat first. New Zealand, for me, lose the game by refusing to bat first. You had India the initiative, they go with a bang, and then thereafter, squad build pressure, a final. But in the end, we're talking about the best team.
And back-to-back wins.
Back-to-back wins in the T20 World Cup. They've won 30 of their last 32 games, completed games in the T20, in ODI, in limited overs cricket. That's ODI and T20s. And those two they've lost was the game against South Africa in this World Cup, and then the 2003 50-over World Cup final against Australia. So they've been that dominant. Actually, the headline I was reading here that has India is what it will take for other teams to catch up with them, because they've been that dominant in limited overs cricket.
Okay. I was about to say, what message would you give these people playing behind us?
Play with a lot of adventure, take a lot more risks for me.
Okay.
That's what I would want to see from Ugandan batsmen. Take a lot more risks.
Okay, they're just playing behind us. I hope the viewer will be able to see them. Why should we care? Iran came out with an apology over the weekend to the Gulf nations, apologizing for bombing them. But there's the World Cup.
But they have not refused bombing.
They have not refused.
They have not stopped.
They have not stopped. But, well, they apologized. I think that in the spirit of brotherhood. So the World Cup is coming up. Why should we care about Iran?
Because Iran, their Moses Magogo released a statement saying that if the ongoing campaign persists, US and Israel fighting them, they will not play at the World Cup. And they received that.
People who had bought tickets.
Yeah, and they received an instant response from Donald Trump, and he said he doesn't care. Yeah, I want actually to confirm the teams that they will be playing and what FIFA can do. Yeah,
because there are some countries yet to qualify. I think DR Congo is one of them.
Is
so
one
can
of
they
them.
easily pull one of those clubs that hasn't yet that hasn't yet qualified?
That is something that FIFA have to deal with. For example, now Iran are in Group G, and they will be playing Belgium, Egypt, and New Zealand. Their games are scheduled to take place between June 15th and 26th. If Iran were to pull out, there's two options for FIFA. One, there is Iraq, who are playing they are still playing their qualifiers. They hand the position to Iraq.
Okay.
The other is the UAE, one of the teams that were knocked out. So that's the option, because the World Cup cannot have 47 teams, you'll have 48 in the end. So that's one of the decisions. But Trump says he doesn't care. But it will be very interesting if Iran eventually pull out, because the World Cup is a game changer financially for many of these countries. Yeah. It may not be a game changer for England or Germany or Spain or France or Belgium, these countries that generate that kind of revenue. But for a country like Iran, you may be looking at anywhere beyond $9 million into the coffers of the FA. It would be very difficult for me to think they're going to pull out. There's even been another story about Iran. Their women have been playing in the Asia Women's Cup. It's happening in Australia, and they refuse to sing the anthem in protest of what is happening in their country, the bombings that are ongoing. So it will be a very interesting story, and will unfold a lot more as the war goes on or the talks begin, because I think in the end there's going to be negotiation.
Okay, and finally, the LFA awards were launched, and we also have the UFC White House. Yeah,
one, the Local Football Appreciation Awards. There's a team that does them, Raymond Kayungirizi. So they were launched at the Chint Center, the shop that is on Ginger Road. They have as many as over 36 categories. They have 36 categories now, up from 30. It's appreciating people who work in local football. So they've named these after people who have been part of the game, including I saw one named after James Mayanja, former journalist Superstone. So it's appreciating people around the game, besides people you do not see. Yeah, there is fans, there is referees, there is people who never get to. I always think that in our country, there isn't enough appreciation. People are not appreciated enough. And for them to come up with this idea, and they've had it before, but they're now making it much bigger. And their host is my famous Gistin, Angaru Kiremu. So Very good initiative in the end. Now, finally, this is a story that makes me laugh and smile every time I see it. Remember, the founder of the Ultimate Fight Club, UFC, I think it's called Dana White, yeah? Is a friend of Donald Trump. Of course, he's a businessman, big businessman, and UFC has gone from just a streaming platform to being watched everywhere in the world. They are hosting a UFC event at the White House this June. I don't know whether that is demeaning to the White House or Donald Trump brings some attention to the home of the US president with fighters who are famous for all the other things, fighting in a cage and everything. You always think of presidential palaces across the world, and the White House in particular, as sacred or some kind of places where getting in is not very easy. There is a UFC event in June in the White House.
No wonder he doesn't care about Iran going to America in June for the World Cup. Well, you'll definitely be bringing us more about that as the weeks get closer to
Can
June.
you imagine if...
we had it here?
Yeah, if President Museveni allowed maybe
Golola.
futsal something, or Golola, let's say futsal, or a netball game in the State House compound?
I don't know.
Whether that it would be something. It would be
something else for sure. Well, that's it for this week's episode of Second Take with IDK Isma Dakabachigongo. Please like, subscribe, and share and comment. We love to read your comments, and we do respond to them online. So do take care of yourselves as we watch the cricketers behind us. Hopefully they will win in Botswana, Namibia, you said? In Namibia. Take care of yourselves. Good day.
Are you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Nabingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College Nabingo Road. GMS Nabingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.